a copy of one. This would be a 2-page. So this is page 1 over here and then page 2 over here. And this would be something that would be a very typical one for an undergraduate student who's applying to graduate school. Now, there are a couple of things I want to quickly point out to you here that are different than on some old timey ones. And some people who've been in academia for a long time still think the old time Vitas. They were very staid, standard way of doing it, which I think was a terrible way of doing it. And so there are better ways to make, you want things to stand out. You want to make it so that people are looking at this. First of all, sometimes people suggest putting up here, it says curriculum vitae at the top. No need to do that as far as I'm concerned. I think it's a waste of space and not helpful at all. Start off with your name. You're going to have an address. Does it have to be formatted just like this? No. By the way, everything in this resume is made up. There's a few things that are real, like Psi Chi is a real international honor society and things like that. But this whole person is completely made up. So there is no person like this. Okay. There is no Central City, Texas, no LinkedIn. Okay. So just keep that in mind as we're looking at this. So this will change the format of this and how it's laid out, and especially the order will change as you move on in your career. But to start off with, your first heading should be education. Now, notice, by the way, here, there's some things that aren't here, and I'll talk about this in the next slide. But don't put things up here like skills and stuff like that. That happens at the first. Don't do that here. That's a lot of people like to put that right at the top. That's okay for a job search down the line, but not for here. So first off, you want your education. Okay. So the university you're at, where it's at, the degree you're going to get. This GPA is, I am back and forth about GPAs. Some people say you should have a GPA. We want to see your GPA in there. I am of the opinion that if your GPA is not fabulous, don't put it on there. Because you don't need to draw attention to it. So if you've got a 3.5, now I think that's great. And I want to congratulate you for getting a 3.5. But for if you're applying for a PhD program, nobody's going to be excited about a 3.5. If you have, let's say, a 3.5 in your GPA, but your psychology GPA is a 3.9, for example, and psychology is a standard major. It's a good major to choose no matter which one of these you're going in. It's not the only one, and I'll talk more about other majors you could have, but it's a good standard major, whether you're wanting to go into counseling or social work or even medicine. It's a good one, and certainly for psychology. So you could put GPA of 3.5 and then psychology GPA 3.9. Then that highlights that, and you probably need to put both of them in, because if you just put your psychology GPA, people are going to wonder, well, what happened to the other GPA? Go ahead and put it there in that case. But if you're not fabulous in any of those, you don't have to put it here. You're going to find it in your transcripts. Let them find it there. You want to highlight things. You want to make it so that when I look at your resume, the first thing that hit me are the good things, the best things. And I go, okay, that's great. Okay. Honors and awards, those may come here, those may come later. It depends. Here's an example where they come up, because there's some really good things, like a provost scholar is usually a really high scholarship within a university, so you might want to put that. There may be enough good things that jump out and you want to put that first. Certifications, this really depends. Are they a real important certification or are they not? Never put just, you went to a workshop somewhere, and you got a certificate of attendance. Never put that. That never counts. Okay. Just throw that and keep it in a file somewhere, but don't put it in here. That's not worth anything. If, on the other hand, you went off and you did, you spent 2 weeks at the, Beck Institute training about cognitive behavioral treatment of depression, and then did the follow-up, clinical supervision that they have for that, and they give you a certification as a cognitive behavioral therapist. Okay, that's worthwhile. That's a long-term training. There's a lot going into that. This certification is one for if you're going to do human subjects research that you have to do. It's not a huge one, but it can be helpful in this case because it tells the person, hey, I can do the research, and when I come in, I've got the training of human subjects Okay, so you can put that there. So be careful about the certifications. The research experience, you want to put your research experience that you have, who it was, who was the principal investigator, or who was the professor. It can be principal investigator, it could be professor, doesn't make a difference who that is. These are people that you're probably going to want to have your letters of recommendation from as well. Then clinical experience. In a clinical experience, you might have very little clinical experience. Most people who are doing who are undergrads have very little clinical experience because it's hard to get clinical experience until you have, or you're in a graduate training program or have a license or something. So it can be hard. Make sure that you, again, have it here if you can. If you have no research experience or your clinical experience is extensive with little research experience, then put clinical experience above the research experience. So you can move where these things are. Conference presentations, publication or publications, if you had more than one, put these here. Notice that I've highlighted, in this case, it's Mary Jones. So I've highlighted in this resume in bold where Mary Jones was. So she was first author here, second author here, and third author here in this publication. Hey, any publications at all are great. Conference presentations are also good. Publications are really good. In fact, even if you're going to a mainly clinical program, the fact that you've done some research work is always good. Not expected in most programs, but higher level programs, they will. So you know that if we go back to the rankings, those top 10, those are all research universities. They will have expected you to probably have a publication or two. Others will not have expected that, but maybe a conference presentation or two. Professional honors society. So were you in Psych High? Were you a student affiliate of the American Psychological Association? These kind of things. And then I would keep this for last, leadership and community service. These are things that you've done. Maybe you've been in a fraternity or sorority. Maybe you've been in, some other group. Sigma Gamma Gamma is just something I made up. Okay. So don't believe that. But, did you do something there? That allows you to talk about that you have something above and beyond just the academics, but that's considered to be less important than this academic. So you want to have this in this order. Do you have to have these all centered with a line underneath them? No, you don't. Could this be certifications, honors, awards, education, and so on? Could that be left justified? Sure, it could. Could it be without a line and you did something else? Yes, there's lots of different ways to do it. The thing I do recommend is having your dates over on the right-hand side here. The old-timey way was putting them all down the left side. Some people still like them on the left side. I think there's a real problem with putting them on the left side because that means that that's the first thing you see. And while I don't expect you as an undergrad to have a lot of time, if I'm looking at this and going, oh, this was only a year they did this. Yeah, but a year is a long time for an undergrad. But it still sticks in your mind when you're looking at it as not much. And especially if you have somebody who's applying who maybe took a gap year and did research or got a master's degree and have a lot more research, these times will look much bigger and that they're inflated. They're important. Put them on the right-hand side. This is the traditional way to do it now. Over the last quite a few years, but the old-timey traditional way was to put it on the left side. So again, you still see some people who want it there, but don't do it. Keep it much more like this. This is much better. Do keep your bullet points. Keep them short. I suggest 3 or 4 maximum for your bullet points. So highlight those most important things that you've done. You don't have to do it like you're going into business. In business, they want things like, I increased revenue by 50%. Over the previous years, they want to know kind of those big gains. We don't really expect that as much at this point. We want to know, what did you do at those points? So I know you worked in a lab. What did you, you supervised and trained undergraduate research assistants. Okay, good. You don't have to tell me everything you supervised them about. I'll ask you about that if I'm really interested in it, but you want to spark my interest here. So these are the things that you're going to want, base it basically along these lines, and you'll be in fairly good shape. And remember that this, they talk about, you can spend thousands of dollars redoing your resume or your vita. In most cases, it's not necessary here. Maybe if you're going to work on Wall Street, they're looking at that, but this basic format will do just fine for you.